Welcome back to the Beginner's Garden Podcast. We are back today with Chad Cargill. You may remember him because he was on episode number 411 not that long ago, and we talked about getting started growing your own fruit. Now, that episode was packed with great information to help you get started growing fruit. But today, we are going to be talking about his favorite fruit to grow, and that is blackberries. I learned so much myself from this conversation, even though I've been growing blackberries for over a decade. So I know that you will learn something from this conversation as well. But before we get started, this episode is brought to you in part by Heirloom Roses. If you have ever struggled with roses that don't last, you need to check out Heirloom Roses. Their own root roses are naturally stronger, more disease resistant, and true to the variety. So you get healthy, long-lasting blooms year after year. And right now you can save. Visit heirloomroses.com and use the code BEGINNER20 to get 20% off of any rose order through September 30th, 2025. Now let's jump into my conversation with Chad. I've been growing blackberries since I started my garden journey, and off and on over the years, as I told him before, we actually mowed over our canes on accident one time, but I'm back growing blackberries, and I love them too, but he is the expert on growing blackberries. So he's going to talk to us about how you can get started growing blackberries and do it successfully. So thank you for joining me again, Chad.
Glad to be back. Thank you.
So why do you love blackberries so much?
I love everything about blackberries. I love when I was a kid being able to go pick blackberries and just I don't know, just not only the taste, but just the experience of it. You know, you kind of think back as a kid, even I remember where I was at the time. I remember going to my grandparents. I'd walk out in Oklahoma, where I'm from, in Oklahoma City, like blackberries grow so wild everywhere, and they get these huge thickets. And I remember we would just walk out through the fields, and we would go to the thickets, and you'd pick. And I just, there's something magical about fruit. There's something magical about sharing it with someone, and I just always want to be part of that. I just love that. And then now with all of the new research and the new varieties, it's amazing. I love being with people. We do a U-pick on our farm at Smith Ferry Farm. We have a U-pick, and families come out, and I tell my kids, we have a bunch of kids, and so we adopted a bunch of kids. We have 8 kids, and so when people come out to our farm, I always tell them, I say, this is not about the blackberries. I know we're selling blackberries. I know, but I always tell them, hey, remember, we're not here for blackberries. We're here for people. And I always tell my kids, I do not want you guys just standing there, just walk around and talk to people. How you doing? Ask them how life is. And I said, we want to build relationships with people because that's what we say we're put here for, relationships. And the quality of our life, as we say that at our church every Sunday, but the quality of our life is based on the quality of those relationships. And so blackberries to me is just a great way that we can all get together and enjoy the fruit, but also enjoy each other.
That's amazing to hear about all fruit. One thing that came to my mind as you were talking about that, one of the reasons I love blackberries, and obviously I love eating them, but they are unique in a way, and I don't know if this is all varieties or just the kind that I have eaten, but you kind of have to pick them at the perfect time, because at least the ones I grow, if you pick them just a tad where they're not ripe, they're a little sour. But then if you pick them when they're a little bit too ripe, then they almost start to ferment sort of on the bush. So the challenge is when you get them ripe, which is not hard, but just being able, when you pick them at the perfect time, you're rewarded for getting them at the perfect time. Are they all like that, or is it just a few?
So it varies by the blackberry.
Okay.
So, for example, we have the Primark Freedoms that we grow, which are the really large blackberries. I mean, they're huge. I love those shiny. I think they taste better shiny. I want those. Now, when we do our U-pick, we only do ponkas, and I would highly recommend anyone who wants to experiment with some blackberries. I don't care if you just try 2 plants at your house. Get 2 ponca blackberries and just see what you think. It will be unlike anything you've had. If all you know is just standard varieties, whatever. A ponca blackberry released by the University of Arkansas not many years ago. It's one of the relatively new ones, but extreme high sugar content, up to 13% sugars, 1% acid or less. If you get a great ponca blackberry, it'll taste almost like a sweet tart. It's so sweet you can't imagine. Now, what we do on our U-pick is we tell people when they're there to pick, I say eat all you want. Just eat. And I always tell them to do 3 different kinds of blackberries. So with the ponca, I tell them to pick a shiny ponca, and I say eat a few of those, and you're going to get a much more tart ponca. It's going to have a little more sour, a little more acid. Then I have them then pick some dull blackberries, and you'll get that perfect sweetness. It's just beautiful. But then I tell them, make sure you pick some shriveling blackberries, because you get that great intense sweetness and almost a fermented flavor to it, especially when you have heat like we do in the South. And so what's interesting is I intentionally leave some to shrivel for our U-pick, because it's just kind of one of the neat features on one of our U-pick is that people are eating different things and getting to experience it. So when people leave, I always say, okay, tell me what you think. Did you try all 3? What do you think? And people consistently say, I wouldn't want to take the shriveled ones home necessarily in my clamshells or whatever, but while I'm picking, I am looking for the shriveled ones because they're the best. Which is interesting, right? Because you wouldn't think so. But it's way more than just half or whatever. But most people will say we love the shriveling ones while we're picking. So you can get a wide variety of tastes in blackberries. And it depends a little bit on variety as well. Like I say, with the Primark Freedom, I like the shiny ones better.
I know that you and I have similar climates, so we're probably able to grow most of the same ones. And the varieties that you mentioned I'm familiar with. But are blackberries like other fruit in that if you go, to New York, are you going to find that those aren't going to do as well, but other ones will, or South?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know about that?
Well, certainly in the South, you're going to have better success with them, right? I think you're going to have, it's going to be a little bit tougher in the colder environments. But you go to a place like we may have trouble with blackberries when it gets extremely hot, just like with a tomato. Our tomato production goes down when the pollen starts dying, when it gets over 90 degrees or whatever. You can have the same problem with blackberries. It can get so hot that the berries have a hard time producing. So you might go to California where you're having 60-degree nights, 75, 80-degree days, and they're having blackberry harvests for a long time. Like they can push things way more into months than possibly we could. I mean, we would have you're going to have to get a special variety to be able to produce in the great heat, or you're going to have to do different things to help with that heat. So a lot of research you can do online on that. I was, matter of fact, University of Arkansas, John Clark, who ran the University of Arkansas blackberry breeding program for years, just an amazing individual. You just listen to him, has all kinds of great videos that they produced on blackberry production, and he goes over the varieties, and now they've got a new director there, and she goes over. And I was even watching some of that today, just kind of preparing for this, just because it's so interesting. And they kind of talk about that a little bit, about the different climates, different things, but how you can push those zones. So you just kind of got to check on that.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly. So
well, kind of like what you were saying in our last conversation, as far as checking your local county extension office or your university of what varieties grow best.
Yeah.
So I would say that would be the first thing, is figure out what you want to grow. What about planting? I know I have planted both in the spring and in the fall.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference? Would both work?
Yeah, you could do either. If you plant in the fall, just make sure you get them in early enough, because you don't want that freeze to come too soon. They need to get established, and so fruit trees are great to plant in the fall. That's a great thing. Is get them early enough they can get established. Or your strawberries, same way, right? So we want to get them early enough. Now, spring is primarily when I plant my blackberries. When I do new plantings of blackberries, I usually do them in the spring. But you don't have to. You could do it different times, and that would be okay.
When do you plant relative to your last frost date?
After.
Yeah,
After. Now that's what we've done in the past with our blackberries, is we've planted after the last frost. Ours is around April 10th, 15th, right in that range. Usually right after that. But you could do different, I believe. I'm not positive on that. Probably not an expert on when exactly, but that's what we've done in the past.
Okay. What about raised beds versus ground, or even containers? Are those what options do we have as far as ground space? Well,
there's great new varieties out. The Bushel and Berries they have some great blackberries out now that are small. You can even do them on a porch. You could be in downtown of your city in an apartment and have your patio out there, and you could go out on your balcony and put a Bushel and Berry out there, and and
that's a brand.
That's a brand. Yeah, it's a variety that you might see. I think some of their cultivars might be like Cupcake, if I remember right. I'm not sure exactly, because I don't have any of those, but you're going to get some berries if you just want something. And as I said with you earlier, like it's a great conversation piece, if nothing else. Like, here, look here, we're growing our own fruit here, and even it's just something that we sit around. I mean, plants are life, and we need to be around life, right? And life is just a great thing, and so you can do that in a small. Now, as far as for your home or the home garden or the home orchard, first you got to kind of think about how big these are going to get. Now, blackberries are pretty large. You can still prune these or control size to some degree. I mean, when we're pruning, we're really tipping. That's kind of a different issue. But in general, I'm going to need for our plants, I'm going to need about 4 foot by 4 foot for a plant. I mean, roughly. Okay. So, if I planted 2 feet, so you could say a 4x8 bed, a 4x8, since most of our listeners are probably, common 4x8 raised beds, whatever. You could do 2 blackberry plants in that. One way you might want to do that, just for simplicity, is you might go 2 plants. You might put T-posts around it with some type of wire for trellis to hold up your canes. And that would be adequate. You could do that just as a trial, just go 2. And see the fruit you get out of that. And we can talk about the technique of that trellising and what we want to do with those canes if you'd like whenever you're ready.
Let's do that, because I think that was something that I wasn't entirely prepared for. And my husband built me something that worked okay, but I always wanted to have something better because the canes just were kind of hard to figure out how to control, especially in the middle of the season.
Sure. So there's different types of trellising you can do on this. Let's first talk about there's erect blackberries, there's semi-erect, and then there's trailing blackberries, or ones that lay over. So in a home environment where you don't have a lot of space, an erect or semi-erect might be a little better for you. But as long as you're trellising them or you're putting their wires around, you could even do the ones that lay over as long as you're getting them up. You definitely don't want your berries on the ground. And when blackberries touch the ground, they're going to try to send roots. So they're going to try to create daughter plants. And so we want to keep those up off the ground. We don't want diseases or different things getting on our berries or getting into our plants. So it's better if you can keep them up. Commonly you'll see T-bar or T-trellises. Mm-hmm. What we do on Smith Ferry Farm is we put a 4x4 post in concrete, and we'll lean it back. Sometimes we'll even put a brace down that we'll connect to back as well to give extra boost. But we'll have our 4x4 post. We'll run our wire through that around T-posts at about every 20 feet roughly. We'll put T-posts, so the wire goes through the post, around the T-post, and then all the way down to the other end. We'll put another big 4x4 post up there and go around that. We use gripples, Girpple, gripple. Gripples are amazing. You run the wire into the gripple. There's a gripple tool. You just crank that thing and it just pulls your wire up. And so we'll go out there periodically and have to tighten our wires a little bit, but it's very easy to do with the gripple tool. Gripples work really well for that. We'll run a wire at about 30 inches. We'll run another one at about 48, somewhere in there. Okay, so that's roughly what we do. What's great about it is with the T-post, with the nipples out on the T-post, you can kind of pop that wire over them and you can adjust the height of your wires as you need to. And sometimes we'll do that. But a blackberry will have, it's a biennial plant. Now it's a perennial, it lasts forever, but each cane is biennial, meaning it's a 2-year cane. First, you have what's called the primocane, and that is your new growth. That is a first-year growth, and in general, it does not produce fruit. Now, there's some great new varieties that are primocane fruiting as well, but let's just say in general, we got a primocane, that's first-year growth. The second year, that primocane turns to a floricane, and that's when it produces the flowers, which is going to produce your berries, okay? What we do is we have our trellis that goes around the wires, and so we're going to take the primocanes, and we are going, let's pretend we have nothing right now. We're going to take the primocanes, and we're going to take them out to the wire, and we're going to tape them to the wire. So we're bringing our primocanes out to the wire, okay? All right, now those are going to turn to floricanes the next year. So the floricanes we're going to be harvesting on the outside wire because everything's to the outside. The new growth will be coming up the middle. That's your new primocanes, right? And so as soon as we've harvested all of the berries off of the floricanes, as soon as they're gone, second year, as soon as they're gone, we cut them.
Okay.
And you're going to take those to the burn pile and dispose of them. You want them gone. And I want them gone not only because I don't want energy going into those because they're done, but I don't want any diseases there because I'm not going to spray we try to go organic. We're trying not to spray. I don't want to leave that there for orange rust, or I don't want to leave it there for any cane borers or anything that got into that. I'm going to get that out of there. I'm going to get to the burn pile. It's gone. The only thing left are the primocanes. okay, the new growth. And the primocanes are beautiful. It's just going to be this beautiful green. I mean, it's just so gorgeous. They actually have 5 leaflets on them. Most of them, I believe, 5 leaflets. One leaf has got 5, whereas your floricanes come out with 3. It's kind of an interesting thing. It's neat to read about. Just the creation is amazing. I mean, like, so. All right, and so what we do is we're going to take those out to the wire. We're going to tape those. So each year when you're picking from the outside. And we open up the inside, so there's a lot of sunlight, a lot of airflow. I want a lot getting into that airflow to keep diseases and fungus and different things from developing on the inside. As those, you can tip those, you can pinch those. It's a soft tip. If you do it while they're growing and they don't get thick, you can actually pinch them with your fingers. And if you pinch that, then it tells that plant, I need to send new runners because I've taken off that where it's growing out. And so laterals will start growing out from the cane. And the key is the laterals is where you get your fruit. So the more laterals you have, the more fruit you get, right?
Okay. So let me just make sure I'm tracking with you.
Sure.
So you're tipping the primocane?
Tip the primocane.
And this is after you have, if you've already harvested the second year, this is after you've harvested?
Okay, so really your first tip is going to come even earlier than that. You're going to be tipping the primocane earlier, and you're also going to do a second tip if you'd like. So, matter of fact, University of Arkansas just did some studies on this, I think within the last 2 years. And so they found that an initial tip is really effective, and then a second tip even, because you'll get even more branching off of that, okay? So each time you pinch that stem, the nodes down below are going to start sending out laterals. Each of those laterals is where you're going to get your clusters of fruit.
Okay.
The more laterals you get, the better. Now, here's a great trick on this. I've got a friend in Mississippi, Bob Hayes' his name. If anybody's in the American Berry Growers group on Facebook, Bob Hayes runs it. He is one of the top blackberry growers in the nation, really. I mean, like, he has miles and miles and miles. Yeah, he's done research for Mississippi State University. He's done all kinds of stuff. What he found was, which is fascinating to me, is that instead of tipping, as the primocane grows, he attaches it to his wire, and he doesn't use smooth wire like I do. He uses barbed wire. Now, here's why. If he attaches it to the barbed wire, it won't move. See, on mine, it's bad because as the wind blows, it's moving, and it's damaging my cane to some degree. Mm-hmm. But I don't use barbed wire because I don't want kids reaching their arms in there and scraping them. All right, because I'm doing it for you pick and all that. So, but he attaches it to the barb. Now, because it's pliable when it's new, you can bend it and you can move it and you can do great things with it. So what he does is he brings it out and then he attaches the barb and he bends it until he gets to the next barb and he attaches it. And then he actually goes down with it to the next barb and attaches. So he snakes it. Now, one plant is going to get optimal at about 5 canes. One plant, about 4 to 6 canes. Because like with fruit trees, and we didn't talk about this in the last episode, but thinning is really difficult to do because you don't want to take all your fruit off, but you have to or you won't get good fruit. You have to thin. If you don't thin, you're not going to get anything. Well, same with blackberries. If you have 12 canes on a plant, it's just too much. You can overfruit, and then you get into all kinds of problems. So you got to reduce it down. So what he's found is instead of pinching and trying to get all these laterals to go, he's found if he takes that cane and he bends it over, and we've even found that if we bend a cane over early, a primocane over early and run it laterally, it starts shooting out all kinds of laterals off of that.
I have seen that.
Yeah. So much like a pear tree, for example. If a pear tree is all vertical, it's saying, I'm for growth. So don't put fruit on me. I mean, it'll still put fruit on, but not like it would. So what you'll do with like a pear tree is you try to open those crotch angles, and you try to get those things to go horizontally, because then the hormones go into it and say, I need to produce fruit. So same with the blackberry. When you lay that thing horizontally, it's saying, hey, I got it. So all of a sudden, all these laterals just start coming off of that. And then you get crazy amounts of fruit. So if you snake like that, you can get that. So that's the way he does. And he's actually done side-by-side tests and gotten more fruit out of snaking, which is fascinating. But you have to stay after it, because once it gets thick, it gets too hard and it'll break it.
Okay, so they have to be really young.
You got to be doing it as it's growing. Yeah.
Okay.
So again, just in general, people should know when you see these huge thickets of blackberries, and as a kid, you just didn't know. You just thought that's the way blackberries grew. But the reason why is the primocanes are searching for light, so they have to keep growing out. and then they die and no one takes the dead ones away. So they just keep, so it's all that dead from previous years in the middle of that. That's why it becomes so crazy thick. And so as you take those floricanes out after they produce, then you take your new primocanes and you're putting them on the wire and it opens it up. So you just keep this cycle going. Now, how long does that cycle go? Well, like for example, University of Arkansas recommends 10 years for a blackberry plant.
Okay.
Now they say after 6 years, you'll start seeing a reduction in production. So your primary years are going to be 4 through 6 is what they say. 4 through 6 will be your top. 6 through 10, it'll start reducing. By year 10, you probably want to have a new patch. So if you're doing it for large scale, then by year 6, you need to be starting your new patch. And then you'll cycle those out. For the home grower, just kind of be thinking of that, because you're going to go, man, what's wrong with my plant? Or, oh man, my soil. Or, oh, I need to add more fertilizer. No, just they have a lifespan. And so they'll start reducing in production.
So remind me, because it's been a few years, will the primocanes not start emerging from the soil until after the floricanes have borne fruit?
They will start before that.
But will they get to where they need to be trellised in some way, or will they still be pretty small?
You will not have to trellis until after you've picked your fruit.
Okay, because I was picturing the floricanes being held up by the edges,
right,
by your wire, and these in the center not having anything to support them.
Right.
But they're going to be fairly okay.
Yeah, and when I say that, I mean, we grow, I don't know, we're growing about 8 different varieties on our farm. We've got Osage, and we've got Arapaho, and Primark Freedoms, and Chester, and Triple Crown. On ours, I don't know of any that I have to put to the wire before I pick. Now, if you were growing something like Immaculate, one of the newer ones, and I'm not sure because I've never grown it, but you're harvesting that in July. I mean, typically, and down in this region here. So I'm not sure by that, because your new ones, they're not, I don't know. I'm not sure. But now on the varieties we grow, we do not.
Just taking a quick break from my conversation with Chad to thank our sponsors. Gardening should be simple, and that's exactly what Garden in Minutes is all about. They're a family-owned company that has been making gardening easier from day one. I've had my garden grids for years, and they are still going strong, even after 2 tough Arkansas winters. They're pre-assembled, tool-free, and deliver even watering to every plant. So there's no more guesswork, overwatering, or dry spots. Just turn it on and let your garden thrive. And if you love raised beds, Garden in Minutes just made them even better with a new 32-inch tall version. Perfect for waist-level gardening without all the bending. Their bundles include modular metal garden beds, a garden grid, and an expandable manifold system, everything you need for a stress-free setup that lasts. Plus, they just launched a brand new website packed with resources, interactive tools, and even a loyalty program to reward your purchase. And good news for Canadian gardeners, they now ship to Canada. If you're ready to grow your best garden with durable, easy-to-use solutions, check out journeywithjill.net/gardeninminutes, and you can use my promo code Jill as a podcast listener to get 7% off of your order. Again, journeywithjill.net/gardeninminutes. We also want to thank Organic Rev. Every spring, I do everything I can to help my transplants settle in quickly, and one simple step has made a huge difference for me for many years, and that is Organic Rev. Before planting, I mix Rev with about a 50-50 ratio to water, and I dip the root ball of a transplant right in and then transplant as usual. It's quick, easy, and I have seen firsthand how much faster my plants establish and start growing. Rev works by activating microbes already in your soil, improving moisture retention, and unlocking nutrients that your plants need to thrive. That means stronger roots, faster recovery from transplant shock, and healthy growth all season long. I use it on everything, vegetables, flowers, even fruit, and I can tell the plants that got the Rev treatment. If you want to give your garden the best start this season, try Organic Rev for yourself. Head to organicrev.com and use my code JILL10 to save 10% off your order. Now let's get back to my conversation with Chad about growing blackberries. Okay, so go back to if someone's not going to want to do the snaking but
Right.
they want to do the tipping because that
That's what I would
seems
do.
pretty
Yeah,
simple.
Let's start with that.
You said to do it twice. Tell me when.
Yeah, on some of the primocane ones, they're now recommending twice. I see in general for a starter, if you're new to this, just tip it once. Just tip it once and watch how things start to spread.
Okay, when do you do that in the plant's life?
Well, now it may vary by where you're located and the variety. So I'm not sure. Now when we tip, we're going to be tipping in, let's see, we would tip probably mid-May. It's probably our first tip, probably mid-May. I'm trying to think here. That gives a month.
So that's before you harvest.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna be tipping early, so we might get 2-3 feet, maybe 2 feet. I'm trying to think. It varies by year, obviously, because this previous year we were 2 weeks early. Everything was 2 weeks early, but probably around mid-May we're gonna tip, and then we would come back with a second tip if we decide to tip, and we would do that after the harvest. I think.
How much do you cut off?
Sure. So you're only going to go back a few inches. You're only going to a few inches. You're going to go to one of your leaf nodes, all right? And that's where you're going to pinch. So only a few inches. It should be soft. It should be able to do it with your fingers. And when you pinch at that point, I would recommend you don't pinch when it's raining. You don't pinch when it's wet. It's going to be a wound. There's going to be an opportunity for fungal diseases there. So just I would do it when it's dry. And if you'll do that, you'll be in better shape. And then you'll see several inches down, you'll see that it'll start trying to produce laterals coming out of that because it's going, hey, I've got to grow. That's why pruning is so effective. It tells that tree, hey, something's wrong. We better produce.
So the purpose, just to reiterate what you're saying, making sure I'm hearing it right, the purpose isn't to control the growth. The purpose is to send a message to the plant
Correct.
to produce those laterals.
You're saying, hey, baby, we better produce because we're going to die and we are on this planet to produce seeds to make new plants. And so it's going to tell it to go produce. And what it's trying to do is trying to send out more laterals so it can make more clusters of flowers. And the blackberry is just so interesting because when you pick a blackberry, it's actually not one piece of fruit. It's actually a bunch of fruit. So each druplet is its own fruit. For example, when you look at like a lily and you got the stamen and the pistil, right? You'll have that one pistil, you have the stamen, and the anthers have all the pollen, and it gets on the pistil, and it's trying to produce a new flower, right? Well, on a flower of a blackberry, you actually have 80 to 120 pistils. There's a bunch on there, and somewhere between 60 and 80 of them are going to get pollinated. And then from that, you're going to get this great berry that has all this fruit, and all the druplets are fruit. And they're just all in one cluster. It's just a beautiful thing. Creation's amazing.
What this makes me think about is that I never did tipping ever. I don't know that I ever heard of it.
Yeah.
I still got a good harvest, but I can't imagine what harvest I would have gotten.
No doubt about it.
Had I not done that.
Yes.
But I did know to cut off the canes, the floor canes after, and I don't know how I knew that, but I think part of it was intuitive because it just starts looking bad.
Yeah.
That you can just tell they're done.
Yes.
They've already produced, and it's nice to clean it out.
It is, yeah, and it takes some work, especially when you have as many as we do. We have basically just giving a perspective of what we have, and commercial growers have a lot more than we do. But for our U-pick, if you look at a football field with a track around it, pick the middle lane, and line up blackberry bushes all the way around that track. That's how many we have on our U-pick. So we have about a quarter mile of blackberries on U-pick. We have them in 100-foot rows, 20 plants in a 100-foot row, and we have 5 rows, and then we have a break, and then we have 5 more rows, then I've got 2 more 100 in another area plus a little bit. But the one thing we messed up on is I was trying to use the space too efficiently, and my rows should be wider. We did 8-foot wide rows. We should have done 10. So our U-pick's a little bit narrow and actually end up having to prune a little bit out of that. I said in the previous podcast, our soil is horrible. It is just sand. I mean, like terrible, no nutrition, nothing. And so in our U-pick, it is all wood chips. And I mean, it's a lot of wood chips. We have all the companies to drop their chips at our place, and we let them set a year before we use them. And then we take those and we just like, that whole thing is just wood chips, that whole span. And so I like to bring people out who love to garden and love soil, because we know, I mean, our job is to maintain that soil, right? We got to build that soil. And I'll just start pulling that wood back, and then I just grab dirt. And you can't believe how black and rich and just incredible that dirt is. It's so amazing how in 2 years it just transformed itself. And now here we are 4 years in on this, and the blackberries are just amazing. And what's great is we do very little fertilization, very little.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah. So I know that if we put more fertilizer in that thing, it would be way better. I get it. I'm trying not to do that. I'm going to tell you a very quick story if I can. I love Disney World, and I love the ride Living with the Land. It's in their greenhouse, and you ride through it, and they have the most amazing fruits and vegetables in there. It's incredible. I mean, you go, how do they grow this? I do the behind the seeds tour on that, and they're all about the land and take care of the earth and all this, which we are as trying to be organic gardeners, right? Mm-hmm. And on the tour, I find out that there's no soil there. It's all sand. And they have tubes that run to every plant, to the whole thing. And they showed us the contraption they use and these big tanks full of the chemicals. And so I said to the guy, I said, so you're running that chemical to every plant? He goes, it runs 24 hours a day, all day. And I said, is this synthetic? All synthetic fertilizer? He goes, all synthetic. And I'm like, oh, so they're on steroids, right? And so that's why they're growing amazing things. It's all a ruse. It's like incredible. So you find that out on the deal. Well, my point of that, to say that is, if I dumped a bunch of chemicals on this, I have no doubt I could get better fruit. I have no doubt. So what we do is this. We put malorganite down because organic gets me some good nitrogen in there. So every year we'll throw organic. We go that. We add sulfur, recommended about 6 to 6.5 pH for blackberries. Again, Bob Hayes, who I mentioned earlier, he's done some testing and found that if you go lower, you actually get better production. And we buy into that. So we add organic sulfur every year. And then I'm not completely organic. We do a little bit of synthetic. I do add a little balanced fertilizer just because when we have our sand tested, it is horrible. That dirt is so bad. So I don't have to, I'm doing less and less though, because the wood chips are completely changing everything. And those roots just grow all out on that shallow. And it's just amazing. We have our drip lines that run underneath it, and we run our drip. We have to run our drip a little more than most people would because of the sand. It just, the water goes through it so quickly.
Yeah. Okay. So let me back up just to give people, if they've never grown blackberries before. Are you saying, or is this variety specific, that if someone is wanting to grow blackberries for the first time this year and they're planting them right now in the spring, will they not be able to expect their first harvest till the next year?
So a primocane fruiting blackberry will produce fruit on the first year primocane. Right? Now, this is a totally new concept. This stuff is just starting to come out now. Ponca is one that will give you some primocane fruiting blackberries. Now, here's the problem, though. Where we're at in the South, it's so stinking hot that they have a hard time producing.
Because it's going to be later?
Yeah, it's late. Yeah, these things are going to be producing later. I mean, they're going to come weeks after you're done with the other, so you're going to get into July. Mm-hmm. It's just so hot. These plants really struggle. The Primark Freedom. I get a flush of Primark Freedom late. I do get some, but man, the plants struggle. I mean, the fruit struggles. The heat on a blackberry can really affect even the color of it. You'll get some of your druplets will be white. Now, frankly, it's not going to hurt you, and it's okay. You can use those in pies. You can use them in cobblers. It's great, okay? You can eat those. You never know the difference. Now, you try to sell that at a farmer's market, no one's going to buy it, and it's just fine. Even when you pick your berries, they might be perfectly black. You pick them, some of the druplets will start to turn red. And then people think it's not ripe. Well, it actually is. Heat has a lot to do with that. It's one reason why you want to pick in the mornings. If you can pick in the mornings, you got that coolness, you pick it, get it out of there, get it to your cooler, get it somewhere you can keep it, and usually you'll do better with it. Now, one thing to say that I think is important, and if I don't say it now, I might forget. If your berries are overwatered, then they will get mushy and they will not have good flavor.
Isn't that the case with most berries?
Most, absolutely. Yeah. And so when we do our U-pick, I pray to God it doesn't rain, and we turn the drip off. So I want that thing to be dry at least 2 days if I can keep it. I want 2 days of no water on that. I want all that sugar to go into those berries. I want to stress it just a little bit. And then as soon as U-pick's over, I'm cranking that water on because I want to dump that water to it. And there was 1 week last year that I had to cancel U-pick because we had too much rain and left the drip on, shouldn't have done it. And I went out there and they were so mushy the day before, and I said, I can't do this. So we can't do it. So stress your plants a little bit with the water before if you're going to do a big pick like that, if you're going to do a large pick. And even if you're going to wait and pick whatever, wait till they're a little bit dry and you'll do better. But pick in the morning. That's going to be real crucial because you're going to get better fruit sets. Some people, there's a new trellis system even that some use. It's the rotating RAC, rotating arm. I can't remember the word. I can't remember it now. I had it just a second ago. But what they do is they actually lay it down It was invented for people in cold climates. So what they do is as you grow, you attach it and you lay it down so you can cover it. So you had more heat, right? So because the canes get too cold. And so in the winters, whatever. So they would do it for northern climates to be able to grow blackberries. And then as long as you keep that moving, that cane stays flexible. And so what happens is all your blooms, all your berries are only on one side. And so you raise that up, and then you're able to pick in the shade because you do it to where the hot sun is on the other side of it. So you're picking in the shade, and it protects your berries from the extreme heat. Okay, pretty good. Also, they found with spotted wing Drosophila that if you're using chemicals and you spray, that spotted wing Drosophila does not like blackberries as much that are on that because you're getting much better coverage and throughput and the heat and everything, and they don't like that, so they get away from it. So you have less trouble with that. So that's some of the new research coming out too. But some people use that trellis that raises up and lowers, and that works well too. So you got options.
So going back to, you said if they are primocane fruiting, and you said that's fairly new, that will be listed on the, on their description.
That is correct.
But most of the time, they wouldn't necessarily expect to harvest till the second year.
Correct.
Okay.
Most will be the second year. And I think one thing just to say, because, unless you just wouldn't know, these are thornless.
Yeah.
That's amazing. When people come out for our U-Pick, I always tell them, I go, listen, let the kids run the rows. It's going to be great. And I said, hey, listen, just give my plants a hug. I'll say, look, just hug them. You just love my plants. And they'll be like, what do you can't, I'm like, no thorns, nothing. And so it's amazing what they produced with these thornless blackberries. And so you can just stick your arms in there and pick. And it's really revolutionized blackberry production.
That's neat. Okay, let me finish up with this question. What about winter care? Is there anything in particular because I know I didn't do anything with my blackberries at the end of the season last year, and I probably should have. But do you do anything at the end of the season?
Yeah, so not a lot. In the winter, the main thing I'm going to do is I'm going to inspect my canes, okay? I want to inspect the canes and see if I have any cane borers. So you'll see it in the cane. The cane will come up, and it'll have basically it's like a lump in it, okay? And if you're seeing a lump in your cane, that's probably a cane borer, okay? So you want to cut that out and get that out of there.
You want to cut that whole cane off.
Get rid of the whole thing. Cut that cane out and get it out of there, yeah. Because it's going to be down toward the bottom. It's not going to be up at the top. It's going to be down toward the bottom. I also just want to look at my plants and say, okay, how many primocanes did I leave? Again, you want to have somewhere 4 to 6. So roughly 5, if you can have 5. So sometimes I got to go in and cut those out, which is hard to do. You don't want to, but you're like, yeah, I need to because you don't want to get too much fruit on it. But other than that, I'm going to go in and I'm going to weed. I'm going to make sure that anything that's come up in there I clear. They send runners, and then you'll get new ones that are popping up. Now, this is very controversial, what I'm going to say here. People get fired up about this, so I don't think you'll catch any grief over this. But if you disagree, whatever. When people come to my farm, they want to get cuttings from my poncas because they're amazing, right? They're like, this is the greatest blackberry I've ever tasted. And they're like, can I get a cutting? And I tell them the ponca blackberry is under patent and it's intellectual property. And I tell them, I will not do that. And so even when my plant sends up a new plant, I can't dig that up and plant it somewhere else. That violates the patent. I know it's extreme, but I'm sorry. I can't take, so people will say, well, hey, would you put that to the ground and let me take that? Like touch it to the ground, let it root, and then we'll cut it and I'll have a new plant. I say it's against the law. We don't do that.
Even if you don't sell it?
Even if you don't sell it.
You can't give it away?
You can't give it away. You can't do anything with it, because it violates the patent. And frankly, I know people say, well, that's no big deal, and it's just you, and you're not doing it. But here's the deal. If we don't support people like the University of Arkansas Blackberry Breeding Program, we never get to taste a ponca. If we don't respect the patents, if we don't respect the intellectual property, they don't have motivation to go out there and invent the new one, the immaculate, that now is going to be producing in July. I want them to be successful. I want them to make money. I even contacted, I can't remember who it was, I contacted University of Arkansas or one of them and said, hey, would you let me pay the royalty fees? And, and just add 50 plants right here. I can't remember what I was trying to do. It was something, I don't remember. And they said, no, you can't do that, because even that, you have to go through these people that are registered for it. And these nurseries pay a crud load of money. These people that sell them, like Pence Farms and different ones. And so I would just encourage people, be respectful of the patents. I mean, they put a lot of money into that. And don't don't sell off your stuff. Don't propagate it. It's against the law. So,
but if it is coming up and it's not in a place you want it to be, do you cut it out?
We do.
Yeah. That's
we just kill
what
it.
I've done.
Yeah. Now, if it's coming up where I want it, I leave it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The big question you get into is if I dig that plant up and I plant it somewhere else, that's okay. But if something comes up from that root, do I have to kill it? I don't know on that. I just leave it. I mean, I don't know if I don't know on that. So I say I just leave it because I just don't know. But
you're saying leave 5 or so canes?
Yes.
And then you prune up
we cut
any
them out.
more?
Yep,
okay, I don't think I've ever done that either.
Yeah. And it's just like thinning your fruit tree. It's just like taking off those peaches, I mean, one tree is going to have 5 million peaches. And I don't know if you've ever done it. We've done a test with it where we just leave peaches, just see what happens. And man, they're so small and they don't taste good. And then we go in, we pick all those off, and then we go in and do it again. Always, everybody's like, what are you doing? But man, we get these huge, great tasting peaches. So same with your blackberries. You'll get better. You can overstress your plant with too many berries. And then you start getting sour berries. They're not quality berries. So 5 really strong, healthy canes that are just loaded will be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about all the things I need to do now differently with the new ones that I just planted a couple of years ago to make them even better, because they produced for the first time this summer and they were amazing. Yeah. But I haven't done anything with them.
Isn't it something when you do that? It's so great because we just freeze. We freeze berries and all that. And so this week we're on our last bag of fruit. And my oldest daughter, Casey, was making cereal, and she just put them all in there, and they're making smoothies. And it's like, God, you just feel so good because you're like, man, we grew that. That's so cool, And then you go out there and you pick them fresh. And I take my little 5-year-old out there, and she's Daddy, let's go pick some fruit, We just go out there. And what a great moment to spend with your family like that, make memories with that and with friends. And God, I just encourage people. That's one reason why I love your podcast so much. I've always loved it for all these years, and just beginning gardeners, like, God, just get outside, go do something, and enjoy that. And, my kids, when my kids came home from Africa that we adopted, it's just, they thought only rich people were allowed to touch an apple. And they wouldn't even touch the apples that we had out there. And when my daughter Clarity stood at our Arkansas black apple tree and picked that first apple, it was a moment I'll never forget. I just cried. It's unbelievable. So I love experiences like that. And plants can do a great thing for families and kids and draw you together. And a lot of problems that we have in life can go away when you're out there and you just have a moment with God and nature and each other. So I hope people experience it.
And one thing about blackberries I've noticed is that they're not a whole lot of fuss. So I know you grow a lot of fruit trees. In my experience, fruit trees are way more labor intensive.
Yes.
So if someone's wanting a easy, and I'm not saying easy necessarily, because I think that might be relative to where you're located, but in my experience, it's been a little, blackberries have been less.
100%.
Blackberries and blueberries.
Oh man, yes. Yeah. Definitely. There's a lot of others that are a lot harder. Let's say that. It's not like grapes. It's not like any of that. Much easier. Yeah.
Well, this has been very informative. Good. For someone who's grown blackberries for many years.
Yeah.
I now know what I can do better. So I so appreciate you sharing your wisdom. And for those who might be in your area that maybe didn't listen to the last podcast episode, where can they come and visit your farm?
Come see us at Smith Ferry Farm. We're east of Oklahoma City, and we're in Choctaw, right on the east side of Oklahoma City. Come see us there. And man, we'd love to have you out for our U-Pick. We used to do that in June. We always go to the farmer's market in our hometown in Choctaw, and we put berries out and say, eat all you want, come eat. And we always sell out like within an hour. It's amazing. And hopefully you come see us. It'll be a lot of fun. And again, just on Facebook, find me at Smith Ferry Farm, and I'll be trying to put some videos out there, but nothing more than that, just to give information and hopefully get to meet some people.
Yeah, if you're in the area, go and visit him. I think it would be, I hope I can eventually get out there and visit the farm. It sounds amazing. Yeah. Thank you again for coming, and I hope you have found this inspiring, and hopefully you'll be able to plant blackberries if that's what you want to grow in your garden this year.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Chad as much as I did. And if you are interested in growing fruit, then next week you'll definitely want to tune in as well. I'm going to be talking to you about blueberries. This is a crop I have a lot of experience with, more so than blackberries, because mainly I've been more successful with blueberries, and I can't wait to share with you what I have learned over the years and also what I've learned new this year after researching a lot of things. It's amazing the things that you can learn even after having a lot of experience. Make sure, if you're not already, to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining me. This episode was brought to you in part by Heirloom Roses. Stronger, healthier roses start with better roots. Heirloom Roses offers own root roses that are disease resistant, cold hardy, and true to variety. With 900 plus stunning roses and expert garden tips, they help your garden thrive. Visit heirloomroses.com and use my promo code BEGINNER20 to get 20% off of any rose order through September 30th, 2025. You can go to the link in the show notes to visit Heirloom Roses or any of the sponsors today and to also get all of those promo codes.